ओम श्री परमात्मने नमः। गीताभ्यासे 10-41 यद यद विभूतिमत्सत्वम प्लस 10-42 अथवा बहुनैतेन यद यद विभूतिमत्सत्वम श्रीमदूर्जितमेव वा पदच्छेदे यत् यत् विभूतिमत्सत्वम श्रीमद् ऊर्जितम एव वा तत्तदेवावगच्छत्वं मम तेजोंशसंभवम् तत् एव अवगच्छ त्वं मम तेजोंशसंभवम् अथवा बहुनैतेन किं ज्ञातेन तवार्जुन अथवा बहुना एतेन किं ज्ञातेन तव अर्जुन विष्टभ्याहमहं कृत्स्नम् विष्टभ्याहमिदं कृत्स्नम् एकांशेन स्थितो जगत् विष्टभ्य अहम् इदं कृत्स्नम् एकांशेन स्थितः जगत्। वाक्यांशशः विश्लेषण। उद्देश्य विभागः विधेय विभागः। उद्देश्य विभागे कर्तृपदीयाः, विधेय विभागे कर्मपदीयाः अन्ये सुबन्ताः विधेयाः अव्ययानि कृदन्ताः तिङन्ताः। यत् यत् सत्वं विभूतिमत् श्रीमत् ऊर्जितम् एव वा भवति त्वं तत् तत् तेजोंशसंभवं मम एव अवगच्छ। अर्जुन अथवा किम एतेन बहुना ज्ञातेन तव इदं कृत्स्नं जगत् एकांशेन विष्टभ्य अहं स्थितः। अव्ययशः अभ्यासः अन्वयशः शब्दाभ्यासः। यत् यत् सत्वं विभूतिमत् वा श्रीमत् ऊर्जितम् एव। यत् सर्वनाम अत्र नपुंसकलिङ्गं प्रथमा एकवचनं। सत्वं नपुंसकलिङ्गं प्रथमा एकवचनं। सत्वं सतो भावः बीइंग एक्सिस्टेंस एंटिटी। विभूतिमत् विशेषणम् अत्र नपुंसकलिङ्गं प्रथमा एकवचनं। विभूति प्लस मत् having the characteristics of a vibhuti. Vibhuti, one with some speciality or the other. Va, avyayam, or Shrimat, Visheshanam. Atra Napusakalingam, Prathama, Ekvachanam. Shri, glory, Shrimat, glorious. Urjitam, Urja dhatoh kta Visheshanam, Urjita. Atra Napusakalingam, Prathama, Ekvachanam. Urja, Urjang. बल प्राणनयोः, टू बी स्ट्रांग, टू लिव विथ एनर्जी, टू विन। चुरादिः दशमगणीयः उभयपदी अकर्मकः सेट। एव अव्ययम् ओन्ली। त्वं तत् तत् मम तेजोंशसंभवम् एव अवगच्छ। त्वं युष्मत् सर्वनाम प्रथमा एकवचनं। तत् सर्वनाम अत्र नपुंसकलिङ्गं द्वितीया एकवचनं। मम अस्मत् सर्वनाम षष्ठी एकवचनं। तेजोंशसंभवं तेजोंशसंभव विशेषणम् अत्र नपुंसकलिङ्गं द्वितीया एकवचनं। तेजसः अंशः तेजोंशः। तेजोंशात् संभवः यस्य तत् तेजोंशसंभवं बहुव्रीहि। One that emanates from a part of my splendor, one that has some element of my splendor. That's a better meaning. अवगच्छ अवगम धातोः लोटि मध्यमपुरुषः एकवचनम्। अवगम प्रथमगणीयः परस्मैपदी। टू गो डाउन, टू डिसेंड, टू कम टू विजिट, गो नियर, टू रीच, ऑब्टेन, टू नो, लर्न, अंडरस्टैंड. See, under is our, gaccha, stand. So understand itself is avagaccha. Curiously, the formation of the word understand in English and the dhatu avagam with the upasarga ava is interesting. They has very close correspondence. अथवा अर्जुन एतेन बहुना ज्ञातेन तव किम अथवा अव्ययम, और अर्जुन पुल्लिंगम संबोधनम एकवचनम एतेन एतत् सर्वनाम अत्र नपुंसकलिंगम तृतीया एकवचनम बहुना बहु विशेषणम अत्र नपुंसकलिंगम तृतीया एकवचनम ज्ञातेन ज्ञा धातोः क्त विशेषणम ज्ञात अत्र नपुंसकलिंगम तृतीया एकवचनम ज्ञा जानाति टू नो टू एक्वायर नॉलेज तव युष्मत् सर्वनाम षष्ठी एकवचनम किम प्रश्नार्थकम सर्वनाम अत्र नपुंसकलिंगम प्रथमा एकवचनम अहम इदं कृत्स्नं जगत् एकांशेन विष्टभ्य स्थितः अहम अस्मत् सर्वनाम प्रथमा एकवचनम इदं सर्वनाम अत्र नपुंसकलिंगम द्वितीया एकवचनम कृत्स्नं कृत्स्न विशेषणम अत्र नपुंसकलिंगम द्वितीया एकवचनम कृत्स्न ऑल the entire of it, whole, jagat napusakaringam dvitiya ekvajanam, the world, the universe. Ekanshena, ekansha, pullingam tritiya ekvajanam, ekah anshah ekanshah, anshah, ansh, ach, a share, part, portion, division, member. विष्टभ्य, विष्टंभ धातोः ल्यबन्तं विष्टंभ प्रथमगणीयः नवमगणीयः च परस्मैपदी टू स्टॉप टू obstruct or better meaning is to pervade to permeate and the same shloka has been quoted विष्टभ्यः मिदं कृत्स्नं स्थितः स्था धातोः क्त विशेषणं स्थित अत्र पुल्लिंगं प्रथमा एकवचनं स्था टू स्टे टू रिमेन अन्वयार्थः ओवरऑल मीनिंग यत् सत्वं विभूतिमत् वा श्रीमत् ऊर्जितम् एव whichever entity has some specialty or is splendorous or is energetic त्वं तत् मम तेजोंश संभवम् एव अवगच्छ take it to be born of a part of me अथवा अर्जुन एतेन बहुना ज्ञातेन तव किम however what do you get ए अर्जुन by knowing all this अहम इदं कृत्स्नं जगत् एकांशेन विष्टभ्य स्थितः what pervades the entire universe is only a fraction of me छंदो विश्लेषणं यद्यत् विभूतिमत् सत्वम् अष्टाक्षराणि तिमत् सत्वम् एतेषां मात्राः एका द्वे द्वे श्रीमदूर्जितमेव वा अष्टाक्षराणि तमेव एतेषां मात्राः एका द्वे एका तत्तदेवावगच्छत्वम् अष्टाक्षराणि वगच्छत्वम् एतेषां मात्राः एका द्वे द्वे मम तेजोंश संभवम् अष्टाक्षराणि शसंभ एतेषां मात्राः एका द्वे एका अस्मिन् दशमे अध्याये एकचत्वारिंशत्तमे श्लोके अनुष्टुप् छन्दः अथवा बहुनैतेन अष्टाक्षराणि हुनैते एतेषां मात्राः एका द्वे द्वे किं ज्ञातेन तवार्जुन अष्टाक्षराणि तवार्जु एतेषां मात्राः एका द्वे एका विष्टभ्याहमिदं कृत्स्न अष्टाक्षराणि मिदं कृत्स्न एतेषां मात्राः एका द्वे द्वे एकांशेन स्थितो जगत् अष्टाक्षराणि स्थितोज एतेषां मात्राः एका द्वे एका अस्मिन् दशमे अध्याये द्वाचत्वारिंशत्तमे श्लोके अनुष्टुप् छन्दः स्वाध्यायः notes of self study. Each one of all the 69 odd entities enumerated earlier has some specialty or the other, even when belonging to a group. The speciality is qualitative. As one mentioned earlier, when understanding the entities, what one should understand are their qualities to be imbibed, are the qualities to be imbibed. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned that Sri Dattatreya regarded 24 precepts Guravaha, very well illustrated at this link, on this page, on the internet. See, 24 Gurus of Dattatreya, nature is the greatest teacher. The 24 Gurus are, I learned patience and doing good to others from the earth, for it endures every injury man commits on its surface, and yet it does him good by producing crops, trees, minerals, etc. From water, I learned the quality of purity, Just as the pure water cleanses others, so also the sage who is pure and free from selfishness, lust, egoism, anger, greed, etc., purifies all who come in contact with him. Air, though moving everywhere, never gets attached to anything. So I have learned from the air to be without attachment, though I move with many people in this world. Just as fire burns bright, so also the sage should be glowing with the splendor of his knowledge and tapas. The air, the stars, the cloud, etc., are all contained in the sky. But the sky does not come in contact with any of them. I have learned from the sky that the Atman or the soul is all pervading, and yet it has no contact with any object. The moon. Now here are the illustrations of the 24 gurus: earth, wind, sky, water, fire, moon. So these are detailed as to what to learn from whom. The moon is in itself always complete, but appears to decrease or increase on account of the varying shadow of the earth upon the moon. I have learned from this that the Atman is always perfect and changeless, and that it is only the upadhis or limiting agents that cast shadows on it. Just as the sun, now the sun, reflected in various spots of water, appears as so many different reflections, so also Brahman appears different because of the upadhis, bodies, caused by the reflection through the mind. This is the lesson I learned from the sun. I once saw a fowler spread a net and caught some pigeons. The mother pigeon was very much attached to her children. She did not care to leave, so she fell into the net and was caught. The male pigeon was also attached to the female pigeon, so he also fell into the net and he was caught. From this, I learned that attachment is the cause of bondage. The python does not move about for its food. It remains content with whatever it gets and lies in one place. From this, I learned to be unmindful of food and to be content with whatever I get to eat. Ajagar Vritti. Just as the ocean remains unmoved, even though hundreds of rivers fall into it, so also the wise man should remain unmoved among all sorts of temptations, difficulties, and troubles. This is the lesson I learned from the ocean. Just as the moth, being enamored of the brilliance of the fire, falls into it and is burned, so also a passionate man who falls in love with a beautiful girl comes to grief. To control the sense of sight and to fix the mind on the self is the lesson I learned from the moth. Just as the black bee sucks the honey from different flowers and does not suck it only from one flower, so also I take only a little food from one house and a little from another house, and thus appease my hunger. Madhukari Bhiksha or Madhukari Vritti. I am not a burden on the householder. Bees collect honey with great trouble, but a honey gatherer comes and takes the honey easily. Even so, people hoard up wealth and other things with great difficulty, but they have to leave them all at once and depart when the Lord of Death takes hold of them. From this, I have learned the lesson that it is useless to hoard things. The male elephant, blinded by lust, falls into a pit covered over with grass. Even at the sight of a paper made female elephant, it gets caught, enchained, and tortured by the goad. Even so, passionate men fall in the traps of women and come to grief. Therefore, one should destroy lust. This is the lesson I have learned from the elephant. The deer is enticed and trapped by the hunter through its love of music. Even so, a man is attracted by the music of women of loose character and brought to destruction. One should never listen to lewd songs. This is the lesson I learned from the deer. Just as a fish that is covetous of food falls an easy victim to the bait, so also the man who is greedy of food, who allows his sense of taste to overpower him, loses his independence and easily gets ruined. The greed for food must therefore be destroyed. It is a lesson that I have learned from the fish. There was a dancing girl named Pingala in the town of Videha. She was tired of looking for customers one night. She became hopeless. Then she was contented with what she had and then had sound sleep. I have learned from that fallen woman the lesson that the abandonment of hope leads to contentment. A raven picked up a piece of flesh. It was pursued and beaten by other birds. It dropped the piece of flesh and attained peace and rest. From this I have learned the lesson that a man in the world undergoes all sorts of troubles and miseries when he runs after unusual pleasures, and that he becomes as happy as the bird when he abandons the sensual pleasures. The child who sucks milk is free from all cares, worries, and anxieties, and is always cheerful. I have learned the virtue of cheerfulness from the child. The parents of a maiden had gone in search of a proper bridegroom for her. The girl was alone in the house. During the absence of the parents, a party of people came in the house to see her on a similar object in reference to an offer of marriage. She received the party herself. She went inside to husk the paddy. While she was husking the glass, bangles on both hands made tremendous jingling noise. The wise girl reflected thus: the party will detect by the noise of the bangles that I am husking the paddy myself, and that my family is too poor to engage others to get the work done. Let me break all my bangles, except two on each hand. Accordingly, she broke all the bangles except two on each hand. Even these two bangles created much noise. She broke one more bangle of each hand. There was no further noise, though she continued husking. I have learned from the girl's experience the following: living among many would create discord, disturbance, dispute, and quarrel. Even among two, there might be unnecessary words of strife. The ascetic or the sannyasin should remain alone or in solitude. A serpent does not build its hole, it dwells on the holes dug out by others. Even so, an ascetic or a sannyasin should not build a home for himself. He should live in the caves and temples built by others. This is the lesson that I have learned from the snake. The mind of an arrow maker was once wholly engrossed in sharpening and straightening an arrow. While he was thus engaged, a king passed before his shop with his whole retinue. After some time, a man came to the artisan and asked him whether the king passed by his shop. The artisan replied that he did not notice anything. The fact is that the artisan's mind was solely absorbed in his work, and he did not know who was passing before his shop. I have learned from the artisan the quality of intense concentration of mind. The spider pours out of its mouth long threads and weaves them into cobwebs. It gets itself entangled in the net of its own making. Even so, man makes a net of his own ideas and gets entangled in it. The wise man should therefore abandon all worldly thoughts and think of Brahman only. This is the lesson I have learned from the spider. The bhrungi or the beetle catches hold of a worm, puts it in its nest, and gives it a sting. The poor worm, always fearing the return of the beetle and sting, and thinking constantly of the beetle, becomes a beetle itself. Whatever the form of a man constantly thinks of, he attains in course of time that form. As a man thinks, so he becomes. I have learned from the beetle and the worm to turn myself into Atman by contemplating constantly on it, and thus to give up all attachment to the body and attain moksha or liberation. The mention Aham idam krutznam jagat ekanshena vishtabhya sthitah. What pervades the entire universe is only a fraction of me, is identical to the mention in Purusha Suktam. Sahasra Shirsha Purusha Sahasrakshas Sahasrapat Saha Bhumim Vishvataha Vrutva Atyatishtat Dashangulam. He stayed all above the entire universe, even after encompassing the entire universe by a part of his. He remained Dasha Angulam Atyatishtat. He remained that much above the entire universe. So, the Godhood, the Brahman, the Brahma Tattva, is always something more than the entire universe. Shubhamastu.